You can hear them because they're more important than me. My name is Autumn Phillips. I'm the managing editor of the Post and Courier. I just want to welcome you here. What's fun for me, about 6 months ago, we had this theory that people would like to drink beer and talk about politics, and it turns out that it's true. We've had a lot of candidates and a lot of South Carolina lawmakers come up, and I think it's really fun. I'm looking out at the crowd and I can see a lot of people, familiar faces. Anyway, thank you for making this a really fun event. So I'm going to introduce you to our politics team, Caitlin Bird, right behind me, our politics reporter. She's going to be asking questions, and Skylar Croft, our political editor with the Post and Courier for 31 years. He's going to be asking questions, and we took a ton of questions from you, the audience, and from our readers, or our subscribers online. So welcome to Pints of Politics, Tom Steyer edition.
All right, thank you all for coming here. I think our format is going to be this: is we're going to start with an introduction, then we're going to go into our questions, and then we will give you the closing.
Great. It's nice to be here.
Can everyone hear me okay? All right. All good? All right. Today our guest for Pints of Politics is Tom Steyer, the California billionaire who has spent millions of dollars in traveling with an anti-Donald Trump message. He made his name as founder and former partner of the investment firm Farallon Capital Management. By some estimates, his net worth is approximately $1.6 billion. Outside of his own campaign, he has been an environmental activist, speaking out on the threat of climate change, and he's known as a mega donor to Democratic candidates. The win is coming. While this is his first foray as a candidate, he did tour with running for U.S. Senate seat in California in 2016 and for governor last year. He entered the Democratic race for president late in the game, jumping in July. After first thing in January, he had no plans to run. He was going to concentrate on impeaching Donald Trump, and that led to his group Lead to Impeach. Steyer is 62 and grew up in New York City, and his father was an attorney who took part in the prosecution of Nazi war criminals during Nuremberg. Let's all welcome the candidate.
Thank you so much for being here. You guys can hear me in the back? Thumbs up? Okay, we're good. Great. Thank you again for being here today. I know it's
Great pleasure to be here.
It's funny, we actually sat down, you and I, back in December of last year when you came to Charleston, and you were, as you told me then, meeting with lots of Democrats. You hadn't decided whether or not you were going to run, and then in January you came out and said, no, not going to do it. But then, as my boss Skylar just mentioned, in July you changed your mind and you declared that you were running. So just to clear up the record here, is running for president a vanity project for you?
No. I'm running for president for a very simple reason, which is I knew that there were going to be a lot of candidates too. And I listened to the debates the way all of you did too. And I heard very fulsome policy discussions about which is the best healthcare plan, and which is the best Green New Deal, and which is the best education plan. And it absolutely scared me because I didn't think anybody was talking about the truth in America, which is we're not getting any of those plans until we break the corporate takeover of our government. And I thought, I'm the father of 4 kids who are between 31 and 25 years old. I am not going to have America not tell the truth about why we have a broken government and what we need to do to solve that, and that we're not going to tell the truth that the climate is changing. It's a crisis. We need to deal with it, and we can deal with it. But I wasn't going to listen to those debates any longer and feel like I wasn't going to try. Like, I definitely am not going to let our generation pass on a broken government and a broken world to the next generation without leaving everything on the table. It's not going to happen.
For your campaign, you called yourself an outsider, but we were looking at some financial figures, and to date you've spent almost $250 million on liberal candidates. That's more than Michael Bloomberg, who's done 164 million, George Soros, who's done 82 million, and you also founded Next Gen Climate, Next Gen America, and it's a PAC that's contributing to Democrats. How can a Democratic mega donor be an outsider?
So let me tell you what I've actually done with Next Gen America, and also with another organization I started, which is called For Our Future. Next Gen America is a grassroots organization that registers, engages, and turns out young people. So really what we do is we go into, in 2018, I'll give you an example. We went into 38 Republican congressional districts and organized young people. We're on 420 college campuses. 13 of them are HBCUs. We spend a lot of time on social media. And between 2014 and 2018, the turnout of young people in those districts went from 18% to 41%. That's what we do. We do grassroots work in that organization with young people. That was the largest youth voter mobilization effort in American history, and 33 of those 38 districts flipped. So when you talk about what we're doing as an outsider, we're not giving money to candidates. We're organizing young people. For Our Future is an organization that I started with 7 national labor unions. We go door to door in swing districts talking to sporadic, meaning not frequent, Democratic voters. In 2016, we knocked on 15 million doors. In 2018, we knocked on over 10 million doors. What we do is try to revive the democracy. We're not giving money to candidates. We're looking at the 50% of Americans, and particularly the young people who are voting at less than 1 out of 5, and talk to them directly to say, why don't you participate in elections? Why do you think it doesn't matter that you vote? And then have a conversation. Because as far as we're concerned, if less than 1 out of 5 young people votes, that's the largest generation in America, bigger than the boomers, most diverse generation in American history. If only 1 out of 5 of them votes, is this really a representative democracy? So when I think about this as an outsider, what I'm doing is grassroots organizing, personally going out and doing it. I do this all the time. I love to do it, by the way. But also starting an organization that would enable Americans to talk to each other again the way we have for hundreds of years about what's right, what's wrong, what's important, and how we can organize to change things for the better. That's actually what I've been doing.
We've had a series of business folks like yourself run. Steve Forbes, Ross Perot, Donald Trump. Why? I mean, why do we need a business person in the White House when this is a government job? This is a government job.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm not a bit like I'm not a bit like any of those people. Honestly, I am a business person.
Sorry.
That's not us.
They're all
We're gonna switch.
they're all conservative Republicans. My basic thesis in 2020 is this: we have a broken government. We're not getting any of the policies that people are talking about on TV unless we take back the government and get back to government of, by, and for the people. So if you believe that's true, if you believe the reason that we don't have health care as a right in the United States, which we don't, and we're the only advanced country in the world that doesn't, if you believe that's true because of the insurance companies and the drug companies and the monopoly hospitals, if you believe we're not dealing with climate because it's bad for oil and gas companies, if you believe that we don't have mandatory background checks on every gun purchase because gun manufacturers don't want that to happen, I can go on and on. If that problem is that we have a government that's been purchased by corporations, then I would ask you, who's going to change it? Is it someone who's been taking on these corporations directly for 10 years, which I have? I've beaten these corporations for 10 years as part of leading coalitions of American citizens. Is someone who's done that for 10 years from the outside going to change Washington, D.C.? Or is it going to be somebody who is, as you say, has a government job, is participating in the system, and has for a long time? Look, I'm talking about putting a limit on how long you can be in Congress or the Senate of 12 years. No one else is saying that. There's nobody in this race who wants to have term limits in Congress. They all would be subject to those term limits. Look, if we had term limits, we wouldn't have Mitch McConnell. And we wouldn't have Lindsey Graham. There is a question about, I've said I want a national referendum. 26 states, you can put a law on the on the ballot and vote, and that's what I've been doing. You can put a law on the ballot, and if enough people vote for it, it's a law. If the legislature won't do it, it becomes a law. That takes away the monopoly of Congress to block everything. We'd have mandatory background checks on every gun purchase next week that the American people got to vote on. I mean, if you look at impeachment, people are acting like impeachment is something inside the Beltway. That's baloney. Impeachment is about the American people standing up for what's right. If you guys are wondering whether this president's going to be removed, the question is going to be for every one of those Republican senators, what do his or her constituents want? Because if enough Americans look at the evidence and say, get him out of there, all those senators are going to realize that the real message is, get him out of there or we're going to get you out of there. And that's going to take them a New York minute to decide which one of those things they want. So when we're talking about why do we need a business person, my question is, don't you need an outsider to clean up this mess? My answer is yes, but because normally people inside the organization aren't the people who really want to transform the organization.
Let's talk about cleaning up the mess, as you said. We've actually been doing this for the last couple of events, and it's a lot of fun. We call it the 90-second question. In 90 seconds...
I gotta drink my coffee if I'm gonna do that.
That's
Come
fine.
on.
Have a sip while I talk, and we'll get there. But in 90 seconds, we're going to ask you to give us your plan for your first 100 days. So yes, doing the math, it's a tough one. You will be timed. I have a timer. It will beep. Are you ready?
Let me think for a second.
You get 1 second to think. Because then it's 91 seconds. All right, here we go. You ready?
Okay, this is
Go.
first thing, declare a climate emergency. Use the emergency powers of the presidency. Second of all, go to the world community and tell them that the United States is back as a value-driven part of the freedom-loving world. Third of all, end the trade war that's such a huge mistake that's hurting American workers, American business people, and American farmers. Fourth of all, I believe we should start to do a commission to study exactly what's happened over the last 400 years here in terms of race. For America to confront it openly in Congress and go through that process together of what the truth is so we can decide how to move forward honestly in terms of what's happened and accept that.
36 seconds.
Left?
36 seconds left. Now it's 33.
I would say, let's see, I would ask for a complete budget overhaul, because I believe what's been going on in the budget is something that absolutely misuses money. Because as far as I'm concerned, we have not nearly enough invested in the American people. So I would want to make sure that we pushed as hard as possible towards healthcare as a right, re-emphasizing education from pre-K through college, and working to a living wage. I would work as hard as possible to re-emphasize the rights of working people and the idea that one job should support a family.
All right, you did it. You had a few seconds over, but you made it work. We'll round up, I guess. I'll let Skylar take the next one.
This is kind of a variation of something you said earlier, but more than any other Democrat out there, you've been really taking it to Donald Trump. Say now you're in a situation where you're on a debate stage with the president. What would you take to him face to face?
Listen, I started Need to Impeach because this is the most corrupt president in American history. And I learned from my father, from prosecuting the Nazis, there's no such thing as a good Nazi. And when there's something really wrong in your society, at the heart of it, you're supposed to fight it to make sure it doesn't grow, get stronger, and metastasize. That's what Need to Impeach was about. It was about him being a criminal and putting himself ahead of the American people. But on the debate stage, that's not the point. He's incompetent. On the debate stage, the point is, what can we actually do going forward in America to have a much more prosperous and just world for the future? So my attitude towards Donald Trump on the debate stage is, let's talk about your failures and how to overcome them. The failed trade policy. I said I'd get rid of it on day one. It's just a mistake. His tax policy, a $1.2 trillion giveaway to corporations and the richest Americans at the expense of everybody else. Horrible decision, by the way, pal. We're going into a recession. You own that. You brought it on. Now let's talk about how bad you are and how we can repair what we're doing. Look, this is a guy who actually went bankrupt multiple times on casinos. No one goes broke on casinos. He's turning us into the Trump Taj Mahal round 2. So my point in terms of the debate stage is not that he's a terrible man who hates most Americans. Okay, granted. Not the point. The point is he has terrible policies, incompetent, doesn't know what he's doing. It's time for Americans to realize, for us to prosper, we're going to prosper by investing in Americans. Really, we are America. America is just the American people. When American people do well, America does well. So let's get over this idea that somehow investing in education and health and supporting working people is bad for America. That is ridiculous. We need to invest in each other, enjoy each other's success, and understand that everybody's success is our success. And that would be my point to him. His hate-filled rhetoric is actually really stupid as well as being immoral.
Let's talk a little bit about policy specifically. You mentioned some of it, which is a nice, helpful foreshadowing here. You've proposed a slew of ideas, including having voters make laws directly, as you just mentioned, through a regular national referendum. We've also talked about the 12-year term limits for members of Congress, and additionally a national vote-by-mail initiative as well. These ideas would likely face some constitutional and legal challenges, because in some of it, you're fundamentally talking about a move away from a representative democracy to more direct democracy. So how do you actually plan to do this?
Look, in every one of these things, except climate, where I'd be using the emergency powers of the presidency because there's so much time pressure on us. The goal is to get a mandate from the American people.
So a referendum on each of these? Is that what you're proposing?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying the campaign itself is an incredibly important part of getting the change. So if you think about how the Affordable Care Act came into being, that whole campaign was talking about health care. Which health care plan, how we do it, so that everybody understood that if Barack Obama was elected president of the United States, his number one thing was going to be pushing through a health care plan. I want it clear in this election that if I'm elected president of the United States, my job, number one job, is going to be to take back this government from these corporations. That they are not going to be allowed to dictate policy anymore. So in every one of these things, whether they require legislation from Congress or something broader, that people understand this is why I got elected. This is the challenge for all of us. It's not going to happen because I snap my fingers and say, I want it to happen. It's going to happen because the American people decide, in order to have the future we deserve and want, we're going to have to make this change together. And everybody who stands in the way is going to have to go. And so part of it is going to be a broad mandate in 2020, but an understanding about why it's happening. So I understand that every one of these requires legislative, congressional support, and maybe more. But But my point is, we need a different understanding of this country. And I'll tell you something. When I think about the United States in 2019, I think we're still working off the failed vision that Ronald Reagan gave us in 1980. I think he had a very simple vision that people came to believe, which is that government is bad. Remember, he said the scariest words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Well, people still believe that government is bad, all taxes are bad, unions hurt working people, pollution is fine. You know, he had an entire litany of statements about how the world works, that trickle down would work. False. All of it false. We need to recast the meaning of America going forward. So really, Caitlin, when I think about this, we need to rethink our relationship to each other, rethink what it means to be an American, and rethink what the government's function is. Everything that the Republicans have been saying for 40 years is wrong. Literally. And we need to say that aloud and have a different vision of who we are and what we're trying to accomplish together. And if we do that, the policy falls out of that. You know, I heard, last thing I'll say is this, I'll try to be a little shorter. I was in Tennessee at a Knee Joint Beach town hall, and a Democratic activist stood up and started his statement by saying, "No one is more anti-tax than I am." And I thought, Ronald Reagan rides again. You know, a Democrat was aping what Ronald Reagan said in 1980. That's what we need to change.
And speaking of change, how do you get people to rethink their own responsibility when it comes to climate change? You've made that such an important part of your platform and a top priority, but as you've said, it can't just be the government.
So, I think there's a couple things I would say to you guys. When I ran my first climate change campaign against oil companies, it was in 2010. And we had a rule. You can't mention climate change. All we ever talked about was creating clean energy jobs, cleaning up the air so people wouldn't be sick, and cleaning up the water. And we got 70% of the votes. The oil companies eventually stopped spending money because they had nothing to say. So how can I get people to do this? Because this is not something which is eat your gruel. We can do this and be richer for it and healthier for it, and there's no other side to this argument. But I'm in South Carolina. I was in South Carolina about a month ago. I went to Denmark. I could see the water problems down there. There are real issues making people sick around this country that we will deal with, that will be an integral part of this policy. So my attitude on this is bring it on. For everybody who tells me this is bad for the economy, I will say bring it on. We have to rebuild America. It's a huge project that will create millions of well-paying, hopefully union jobs around the country, specifically in South Carolina. Bring it on. There's no other side to this argument in terms of whether we have to do it, whether we can do it, and whether it won't make us better off to do it. So my attitude is, if this is going to be the subject in America, great. That's the best thing that could happen as far as I'm concerned, because I think we'll win 70% of the vote.
On the 2-year anniversary of the mass shooting in Las Vegas, you rolled out a plan to tackle gun violence, and that included a voluntary gun buyback program for all firearms, not just the high-caliber weapons, assault weapons. What's the point of that? Because that's something that our police departments already do. That's real. Yeah, we do that seasonally, where you might get a Walmart card if you turn a gun in, and that sort of thing too. But so that really is not hard legislation. What would you do in terms of reducing gun violence in the country?
Well, let me step back before I talk about the policy and talk about the values for a second, who I am with regards to guns. So, you know, I am a gun owner. We raise cattle, and on that cattle ranch, we have a number of shotguns and a couple of long guns. That some of them, one of or two of them I probably bought myself, and the rest of them I inherited from my parents or my wife's parents. We also give for free gun safety courses at the ranch for anybody in the community, or really anybody who wants to come to make sure that people are gun safe. And I look at this country and I see not just the mass shootings that get all the attention on TV, but a level of gun violence in terms of murder and suicide that's completely off the charts for any other advanced country. And so if you look at the total proposal, Skylar, it does include voluntary gun buybacks, because I'm not in favor of mandatory gun buybacks. But what I'm also in favor of is mandatory background checks on every gun purchase, forbidding the sale of assault weapons, getting rid of high-capacity magazines, licensing gun owners, registering the existing assault weapons. So actually what we're talking about is trying to produce a society that treats guns for what they are, which is very dangerous tools that people should know how to use, should be checked to make sure they're appropriate to own them, and to reduce the number overall in society. Because if you actually look state by state, different states have different gun legislations. And so you can see that the number of guns per capita in states vary very dramatically. And it's very highly correlated. The number of gun deaths is very highly correlated with the number of guns in society. And so the overall point is to make sure in the short run that we have responsible licensed people owning guns, that we get rid of the worst possible guns or register them, but that over time we reduce the number of guns in society in general. And that's, let me give you just some numbers. 60% of the gun deaths are suicides. 60%. That's the murders are 37%. So when you think about the number of guns in society, if there's a gun handy, you have a much higher percentage chance, if you're feeling incredibly depressed, to do something effective about it. So that's really the policy. To be responsible, to bring this down, to understand that we also have an obligation to the young people in the society, so they don't have to say to adults, which the kids from Parkland, Florida said, do your job, prevent me from getting killed. The idea that we can't answer those young people affirmatively is a complete failure of government. It is the people of our generation not doing our jobs. And so my proposal here is to be responsible, to understand what a gun really is, and to deal with it in an appropriate way in the 21st century.
Let's talk for a little bit just about your own journey with politics, since it's a little bit unconventional. When did you first become interested in politics? Like, was there SGA elections? I mean, what was it that really lit your fire? And it can't be investing in climate stuff. It has to be something else. There's got to be something.
So, I grew up, as everybody here probably did, believing that the United States is the best country in the world, that we're imperfect, but that when we have a problem, we deal with it appropriately, and we can trust the government to do that. And so when I was investing and starting a business and building it, I took that for granted, that basically if there was an issue in the United States, I really felt like, and I used to say, people yell and scream at each other for a while, then we'll meet in the middle and solve it and keep moving. That's the American way. I got very upset in about 2002 because I felt that George W. Bush was going to be a terrible president. And I felt as if when he was elected, I thought, I don't agree with him. He's a compassionate conservative. He'll be like his dad. I may not agree, but he'll be a responsible president. In 2002, I decided, he's going to set the United States back 25 years, and I'm not going to be able to look my kids and my grandkids in their face, and when they say, what did you do when this guy was really tearing the country apart? And I said, I was just running my business. It wasn't going to be good enough. So I worked hard for John Kerry. I thought, I'll just go and support somebody in the way that actually Skylar was suggesting I kept doing, but in a very straightforward way, just support a candidate who I thought had the best chance of stopping Bush from getting reelected. And I was really serious about it because I felt as if he got a second term, it would be disastrous for the United States, which in fact it was. If you look at the Great Recession, if you look at the way we got stuck in 2 wars, the longest wars in American history, he was a disastrous president. Doesn't make him a bad man. Disastrous president. And so that was it. I felt as if I've been so lucky. Look, my parents, my mom was a school teacher in New York public schools, and she taught in the Brooklyn House of Detention. My dad he was the first generation in his family to go to college. He quit his law career to go in the Navy in World War II, and he prosecuted the Nazis. They were Depression-era World War II babies. They thought, you give as much to the country as you get from the country. That's what I think. And so when I saw George Bush, I felt like, okay, I get the point. I've gotten an amazing amount from this country. I'm super lucky. I know that people have sacrificed to give me the chance to live the way I'm living. Now it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm participating in solving a problem for the country. That's what I felt like. That's what I feel like I'm doing now. Is I know how lucky I am. I didn't know, when I was young, I didn't know how lucky I was. I didn't know how lucky I was to be in the United States. I didn't know how lucky I was to know that I'd have a hot meal every night. And I might argue with my mom about what we got, but I knew I was getting a hot meal. I knew where I was going to put my head down. I know who would read to me at night and say prayers with me. And I thought everybody had that. Now I know they don't. And so as far as I'm concerned, I know how lucky I've been my whole life. And my goal is to make sure that as many people as possible get the same luck I've had. That Americans get that same luck to see how much they can do with their lives. That's what I felt like in 2002. That's what I feel like in 2019. And I'm determined to make it true.
So this question actually comes from a member of the audience, Randy Henson. I hope I said your name right. The question is, how will you appeal to Southern voters? You grew up in Manhattan, you live in California. How are you going to make the pitch down here?
Well, it's funny. Every part of this country is different. And one of probably the best thing I've ever gotten to do, the most valuable thing I've ever gotten to do, and the thing I've enjoyed the most is actually traveling around this country for the last 7 years, full time, both registering people, talking to them, running town halls, doing exactly what we're doing here. Frankly, if you guys were asking the questions directly instead of submitting them, it would be a little better, because I love to hear what people have to say. When I look at the South, and I think that's not even fair, to be honest, Caitlin, because I think every state is different, and state includes really different parts. You know that South Carolina is not one place. It's a bunch of places with a bunch of different histories, people coming from different places. When I look at the South, the thing that distinguishes it above all is faith. People in the South, and in South Carolina specifically, are more conscious of their faith. It's more upfront in terms of how they make decisions, and it's something that actually, I happen to be a really religious person. You know, I write a cross on my head every single day in ink to remind myself to make sure I'm doing the right thing. And I think that that's something that's very important for the people in the state. I think it's also true that race is something that is more significant in the South than it is, for instance, in my home state, because we have a state that has 42% Latinos. We have a gigantic Asian American population. So I think this is a part of the country where race is something that's on people's minds, and where we should talk about it and deal with it, in my opinion, very straightforwardly. But in terms of appealing to people, I believe the issues about the right to health care, the right to education for everybody that's decent, that gives people a chance, the right to a living wage, those are things that go across the country. And the one thing I can tell you is, having gone around and done for 7 years grassroots organizing and town halls, meeting Americans is the most reassuring thing I've ever done. Americans are really decent, really smart, really brave, really compassionate. We are much better than our government. And so I look at the people of South Carolina. I'm not worried about the hearts and souls of the people of South Carolina. I think the people of South Carolina have not got the government they deserve. I think that across the country, we haven't gotten the government we deserve. I do believe we need to take that back for ourselves. But I don't believe that I'll never say something here that I wouldn't say in San Francisco or Alaska or Maine. As far as I'm concerned, I have to be completely honest both about who I am and what I stand for every single place. And I believe that Americans respond to the same things.
Let's take that answer a little bit more minute. The black vote is all key and all important in South Carolina. Right now, it seems to be breaking majority towards Joe Biden. How do you go into the black community and say that you are a better candidate than Joe Biden? Specifically, Joe Biden.
So let's talk for it. I don't want to say a single mean thing about Joe Biden. I think that every Democrat is better than a criminal in the White House. So if I'm going to run somebody down, it's definitely going to be the most corrupt president, maybe one of the most incompetent presidents, apparently one of the most deranged presidents in American history. But let me say this. My wife and I, 12 years ago, started a community bank in Oakland, California. And we started it because, honestly, George W. Bush got reelected and we didn't know what we could do, what we thought we could have done through the government we had to do ourselves. The bank is dedicated. We chose Oakland because Oakland is the most diverse city in Northern California that has the highest African American population. The bank is dedicated, it is mission driven, and is dedicated to economic justice, environmental sustainability, women and minority owned businesses. We started, of course, we had to get a bank license. At this point, we've taken it from $0 to $1.1 billion. In the last 3 years, we have lent to over 6,000 low-income housing units. We've taken on the payday lenders. Every loan is measured for its impact on the community. My mom had an old saying, actions speak louder than words. If we want to see someone who's taken actions specifically to enable success for African American business owners, African American renters, African Americans who need a car loan in a way that the money we put in we can never get back. We put it in through a foundation so that no one would ever say we were doing this to make money for ourselves. But I think that's over 12 years. It actually started 14 years ago of saying this is something that we value. We've spent years on it and hundreds of millions of dollars. Second thing I'd say is this. I pushed really hard for the end of cash bail in California, which we eventually got. If you think about the criminal justice system, one of the things that is most unfair is the idea that you can go to jail without ever being convicted of a crime if you can't make bail. I know that doesn't specifically mention race at any place. In fact, it disproportionately affects African Americans and Latinos. It's dramatically unfair. We managed to get rid of cash bail in the state of California. I could get going, Skylar, but I think the point is this. Actions speak louder than words. Let's go to the videotape about what you've actually done. And I've been doing